Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, and coming to you from the southwest corner of Washington State, 2,454 miles from Little Caesars Arena. Now, we're on our sixth day of our hiatus away from the Red Wings. We got another 16 to go before they take on the Senators up in Ottawa, and another 6 or 7 after that before they return to LCA to take on the Vegas Golden Knights. In the meantime, we're waiting for U.S. men's hockey competition and all men's competition over there in Milano. So while we're doing that, I've been kind of going over teams, especially the teams that are really stacked with NHL players. I have already talked about Canada, Team USA, and Team Sweden. But Finland is another team that is top to bottom NHL players, and I'm going to read them off just to show you that I can be the rain in Spain falls mainly in the plain version of hockey names. Eat your heart out, Chuck Bowler, narrator of the Voices of Hockey. I'm going to try it out here. Aho, Armia, Grenland, Halla, Hintz, Kako, Kapanen, Kiviranta, Lekkonen, Lundell, Lustoranen, Rantanen, Teravainen, Tolvanen, Heiskanen, Jokiharju, Lentonen, Lindell, Mata, Matrapello, Mikkola, Ristolainen, Lankinen, Kopasalo, and Saros. And for Team Czechia. Not as many representing NHLers, but still difficult to say nonetheless. Faksa, Hertel, Kampf, Nessis, Palat, Pasternak, Tomasek, Hronek, Spacek, Dostal, Vemelka, and Vlader. Now, looking at Rantanen on Finland, seeing as how Mikko has gotten into a couple of incidents, got him in hot water this season, a couple of misconduct calls and a suspension, it wouldn't surprise me if he's playing alongside teammates of some of those players that he bullied up. And it probably makes for an uncomfortable moment in the locker room. Switching countries and going to U.S., considering the fact that Matthew Tkachuk went over and kind of did what he did and checked Kucherov, kind of goon maneuver during the Stadium Classic. Jake Gensel, teammate of Kucherov, is on Team USA alongside Matthew Tkachuk. And I can only imagine, hopefully for Gensel's sake, that he had a little bit of an earful to give Matthew Tkachuk. There's no place for that. And he basically, yes, we're brothers for a couple of weeks here representing our country, but do not think for 1 second that I've forgotten about that, and we may have to settle matters a little bit more. Probably not Gensel going to be settling any matters. He's not necessarily the goon or the enforcer for the Lightning. I think that was Hagel that was really going after it. He was the one that got into us with Swayman. But like I said, I feel like these opportunities kind of come of this playing in this, kind of rarefied situations where, yes, you're representing your country, but you also are representing your team a little bit and probably have to a little bit something to say to clear the air. As we are basically without a little bit of the NHL and the Detroit Red Wings action, I do want to bring a segment that I will only be able to do maybe 2 or 3 times because I only have 2 or 3 books that I've read. But I obviously have plugged my book, The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, on the show many times to tell you it's available in audio format on Audible and on Apple Books. Check it out, 65 NHL play-by-play broadcasters discussing 35 NHL teams, some of the greatest moments in hockey history and the experiences, the firsthand experiences of those who called them. But today, I'm going to speak a little bit more about another book that serves around the Red Wings, and that is Hockey Gods. Now, I read this book about a few years ago, and it's by Nicholas J. Katsanika. Man, this show is just full of these 5-syllable, 4-syllable names from languages that I do not speak. But Katsanika does a great job in going in depth of the 2001-2002 Detroit Red Wings, that future Hall of Fame, class of 3 years from now, as I call it in the Voices of Hockey. Basically, Eventually now 11 teams on that, or 11 players on that 2001-2002 team that are now Hall of Famers, now that Datsuk got inducted in the last year. And, when, I'm not saying if, I'm saying when Chris Osgood finally gets that nod to be in the Hall of Fame, that'll make 12 on this team. There's a couple of parts that I found really interesting, specifically when there's basically a part where Brett Hull is sitting there in morning skate and Hasek's in the net, and everybody's kind of like, well, how about for old time's sake, how about one more for the road? And now, if any of you, obviously going back, now it's going back close to 27 years now, remember it was the 1999 Stanley Cup Final, Game 6, triple overtime, Brett Hull skate in the crease, gets one past Dominik Hasek, and a goal that Hasek obviously contested as much as he could, but it was still upheld. It's probably still debated in Buffalo circles still today, 27 years later, but Hull got the best of him on that. And, it's kind of like, hey, how about one more for old time's sake? And so Hull got on a little breakaway during practice skate to go up against Hasek. Now, this proved to be the year that Hasek would finally get that Stanley Cup ring. He got another one in 2008. But some stories like that really sell the book for me. It's a great book, obviously, with such a happy ending for the Red Wings that year. The Western Conference Final, it seemed like the Avalanche had them dead to rights after that Game 5 overtime win, but the Red Wings wouldn't allow another goal the rest of the series. And here you are, basically taking on a Carolina Hurricanes team after taking on maybe one of the best teams that you're going to face in the playoffs. And the Hurricanes gave them a little bit of hell for the first game and made it look like it was going to be a tough series. The Red Wings finally just showed their grit and prevailed. But I recommend you checking out the book. It's great. It gives a lot of detail about a lot of things. Obviously, that was Scotty Bowman's swan song. He said to Mark Francis in the handshake, "It's it for me." I think Mark Francis might be the first person to get the news of Scotty Bowman's retirement. But I would recommend checking that out. It's probably on Apple. No, it's probably on Amazon. That's how I got it. But it's definitely worth a read. I'll bring another book club suggestion in probably next week or so before we get back on the ice. But this is one that I definitely recommend. I have it in my library with all my other sports books and my own books. So it is Tuesday, which means it's Tantrum Tuesday, and the fight that I'm going to discuss didn't last that long, but I'm going to discuss it anyway because it was a Red Wing getting a little bit of a tantrum on, and that's Travis Hamonic taking on Brandon Tanev of the Utah Mammoth. Now, this was our last game before the break, and we were already down 2-0. I believe this was in the second period. It wasn't even into the third, but Tanev basically went after Hamonic and put him into the boards, and he put him in pretty hard. It was one of those board swinging kind of hits, and Hamonic wasn't having anything of it. He's like, okay, no, this is happening right now. This isn't skate up the ice and chirp at each other and finally just drop the gloves. It was like, we're doing this now. Don't even skate. This is happening. It was like one of those concurrences. Maybe the ESP was really kicking in, but yeah, they threw down. And Hamonic made quick work of him. Hockey Fights gave it 97% to Hamonic on this one and 3% to Tanev. Just kind of like trying to light a fire under the Red Wings during the action here, and wasn't quite successful. They ended up losing 4-1. But one thing I will note from Hamonic during that fight is that with his helmet off, obviously the Chicago cop mustache, notwithstanding, he looked like John Bernthal. Now, if you know who John Bernthal is, he's the guy that played the Punisher on the Marvel and the Netflix series, and he plays Ben Affleck's brother in The Accountant. So with that big old bushy mustache, he and with the fighting spirit, he definitely reminded me of John Bernthal. But it was great. It was obviously the desired effect did not really go through. They didn't really mount any kind of offensive threat the rest of the night and got handled. But I think the intent was to try to rally his team up a little bit. It was a very short fight. He landed a lot more punches than Tanev did. But it's good to see a Red Wing in Tantrum Tuesday, especially on the winning side. So wrapping up the show, I just want to talk a little bit about Talbot, and not like anything's changing, not like anything's going to change. Gibby obviously is finding himself in a little bit of a slump, and I know that Gibby started off the season. I think he was 4-7-1, and I think he is now 18-5-1 since then. But Talbot, on the other hand, started out the season 9-2, and he's 11-7-4 altogether now after that 9-2 start. He's 0-1-2 in his last 3 starts. In defense of Talbot, he has been playing basically on the second of a 2-game set in the back-to-backs. Obviously playing with a really tired and gassed team, maybe not with their legs beneath them and not skating to their utmost for him, putting him in difficult situations. I just know, though, that Talbot is a seasoned veteran goaltender, and he may be something that's vital to us if we are to make a playoff run, especially if Gibby maybe starts to get the yips. Maybe this slump that Gibby's going through maybe extends a little more. We may have to change up the script a little bit to make it work. So I'm hoping that it's not necessarily the case, but I'm also kind of optimistic because we did see how Gibby was starting and struggling out the first of the season. A lot of people were saying, this was a terrible pickup. And obviously he's changed that script a lot with what he's done, especially since, November on up, and especially since the team has been on that tear for those 2 months to really put them in the position that they're in. So I'm going to still spotlight there on Talbot because we've seen how in the past in the postseason that sometimes this 1-2 goaltender combo sometimes gets it done. I don't think we'll have the deep run that the Pittsburgh Penguins had in 2016, 2017, winning those Stanley Cup finals. But it is good to have a good second, a good number 2 in your holster, just in case number 1 is starting to get the yips, like I've said. But that's been our show today. This has been Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. Again, I'm Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey. I want to invite you all to please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be continually giving NHL news, rumors, basically going around trades and things like that. But while we're on this NHL hiatus, I'm going to be trying as much as I can to give you highlights and stats and whatever I can from the Olympic action. So if you want to have that and you have your daily dose of it, subscribe to this channel and you'll get it every day at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, LGRW from the PNW.